We may be heading into April on a downturn, but it's opened up some opportunities that are too good to ignore. MarketBeat's Thomas Hughes joins us for his 5 buys in April. Thomas, this is one of my favorite series. I always love to see what you are most interested in the month ahead. And these are some big names, but I'm excited to hear your argument for why now is a good time to get in. I am shocked to see the last stock that you have on this list. We're saving it for the end because I never thought this one would show up on your buy list, and I can't wait for viewers to see what they think about this. But let's get started, Thomas, with your thoughts on what you're watching heading into April. There's been a lot of volatility, I feel like, to end out March.
Well, right. So the market has been kind of, shaking out some weak holders, and there's fear in the market and concerns. A lot of the names on this list are names that we've talked about a lot, and I've been bullish on quite frequently. And these stories are ones that just, take some time to unfold. But also in that sense, there's some very bullish stories. And when we have these kind of bullish cases developing, these are stories that can play out for quite a long time, many quarters, many years. I mean, you just look at the AI trade that started years ago, and that bubble is still growing. And you'll see that bubble reflected in the picks today.
These are names you've been bullish on for a while, except the last one, which is why I'm so surprised to see it on the list. And we're going to get to it in a little bit. But let's get to the first name on the list today. This has been one of your favorite names for a while, and it's one that we haven't talked about in a while. But let's talk about this first name for April.
Well, right. That's NVIDIA. NVIDIA is, the source of all things AI. It's the driving force behind AI. Its stock price has really been struggling, I would say, since the middle of last year, moving sideways in a range. But that's the market consolidating and digesting all the gains and allowing the stock price to kind of match up with the forecast. So what's been going on over the last 6 months the forecast just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so now the moving averages have kind of caught up with NVIDIA's stock price, providing some support and potentially a trigger for higher prices. But within this, NVIDIA's valuation has also fallen to really deep value levels. The last I checked, just before this segment, NVIDIA was trading about 21 times its earnings. That's about a 50% discount to its norm. It's about a 50% discount to where blue chip tech stocks tend to trade when the market's happy. Looking at the long-term forecasts, which have been affirmed by the recent results, the valuation's even deeper, and we're looking at potential for 400 to 600% upside based on these numbers. So this to me is it's like one of the best times to buy NVIDIA. I mean, potentially even better than when the AI bubble first boomed and you saw the kind of stock price gains that we've gotten since then.
Yeah, I think when we say that the opportunity is here, it really comes down to the price to earnings ratio that you just talked about. I mean, NVIDIA keeps coming out with these stellar earnings showing all of this growth. And then the last earnings report, I want to talk about that because it showed predictions for even more explosive growth that a company this size just never sees.
Well, that's what's really mind-blowing about this is we've been seeing these triple digits growth year over year over year. And right now there had been some deceleration in the last year or so, but now we're reaccelerating. And we were reaccelerating without the addition of China. And what has entered the news story the last few days or weeks or so is that NVIDIA has begun to get orders from China. So this guidance that they gave us just a few weeks ago is too low because now we're going to have to add China into that. And that all just plays into the robustly bullish outlook.
I think the China implication is huge for NVIDIA. And I also just think that it's so interesting to see that NVIDIA's stock price hasn't really done much of anything for almost a whole year now, where there hasn't been a lot of growth in really either direction. It's trading much like it was about half a year ago, for sure. And why do you think that is? Why do you think we keep seeing data, reports, dollars coming into this company that show this is a strong company, there's revenue growing and it's not slowing down, and yet the stock price really isn't reflecting that earnings data that we're seeing?
Part of it's what I was saying before, just the market digesting the news and getting accustomed to the outlook, having the data stream reaffirm that outlook. But what I really see, I mean, as tepid as the market action has been for the last 6 months, 9 months almost, is really quite bullish because the market advanced the 2022 lows by many thousands of percentage points, and it's been consolidating at this high level and maintaining this high level. At the same time, we've been talking about the market rally broadening. So what's happening is investors are selling NVIDIA, taking those profits and putting them in other stocks. But at the same time, new investors are still buying NVIDIA and supporting that price. So eventually the market will have sold off enough NVIDIA, taken enough profits off the table to make it attractive again, which is what I see in the valuation metrics. So that kind of plays into this outlook where NVIDIA has become really attractive. It's definitely got catalysts. The trend is up. And so I would really expect to see this market begin to gain traction again pretty soon, potentially be catalyzed by the upcoming earnings release, and then continue this trend to new highs.
Now, this is one of the names I have on my watch list already. If you've not been to Bridget's Buys, you should check it out. We like to follow along with the movements of the stocks that we talk about on this channel. And I added NVIDIA back in December, and it's been pretty flat. It hasn't done much of anything since that December timeframe when I first added it to the watch list. So I'll be curious to see how much more this name moves over time over the next 6 months ahead. Again, you can check out Bridget's Buys by scanning the QR code or going to marketbeat.com/Bridget. Follow along with what we talk about on this channel. All right, Thomas, let's get on to the second stock on your list. This is one I also have on my watch list because you've suggested it so many times before.
Yeah, the second pick is Advanced Micro Devices, and this is kind of a two-pronged story. There's a valuation and a company pivot at hand. So, the valuation right now is much higher than NVIDIA's for the current year earnings, but for Advanced Micro Devices, the current year earnings don't matter so much as the forward outlook because of this pivot that's at hand. That pivot is the launch of the MI450 line. That includes the Helios rack scale solutions, which puts AMD on par with NVIDIA as far as its ability to service hyperscalers. So we're looking for Advanced Micro Devices revenue growth to surge, potentially to triple digits within the first quarter of launch, sustain that high pace for many quarters thereafter. And in this scenario, Advanced Micro Devices' long-term valuation forecast is on par with NVIDIA's, which means we're really looking for triple-digit upsides, potentially 300 or 400% over the coming years, based on this robust outlook for the MI450.
Yeah, I know that outlook is what you've been talking about the last 6 months or so, is really preparing for that product to hit the shelves and really show up in AMD's earnings and revenue in the years and still in this year ahead. Let's talk about, have we seen that yet? I know we did see a few different spikes on earnings or on some other news for AMD this year. Is it sustaining that or holding that so far?
It is. The market has rallied pretty strong off last year's lows. We gapped up late last year, middle of last year, set some fresh highs. We've been pulling back and moving sideways since then, but we're showing some strong support at these high levels. Totally expect to see the upcoming releases, affirm this outlook and help catalyze the market. Stochastic and MACD are both set up for a nice bullish swing. We just need a catalyst, to get the market invigorated. The company has been on track to do this for several years. I mean, we've known that they've been behind on their rack scale solutions and in their stack for AI for many years, and they've been working on this. And these big spikes and pullbacks that we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years are really tied to that. And the market, gets this idea that AMD is going to do this thing, and it looks way far ahead and sees the result, which is growth. And so the price shoots up, but then it realizes, hey, it's still going to be a few years before that happens, and results today aren't quite that good, and the stock sells off. And then again, more good news, the market shoots its vision way far in the future and sees all those big results, and it shoots it back up again. But right now, we're riding that big wave higher, but the market is sustaining support at a much higher level, indicating a pivot, a shift from those previous trading periods that shows the market really is ready to advance into these new higher levels and start making the gains that NVIDIA made when it first became juiced by the AI trade.
I think it's interesting that the first two stocks on your April list are both, chip makers and competitors. But before we move on to the rest of your list for this month, I think I want to talk about the demand that we're seeing for these chips. How much does that factor into your buy right now for both of these companies? We just interviewed a drone expert on the channel, and he mentioned that every drone today has an AI chip on it, an NVIDIA chip, an AMD chip. That's another whole area where these chips are everywhere, and it's not slowing down. It seems to be adding new devices, new things every day that they're adding these AI chips into. And so I just want to talk about demand overall for both NVIDIA and AMD leading into the next 12 months.
Well, right. I think that chip demand is going to be pretty strong. And within what you're asking, there's the GPUs, which power the data centers, and then there's edge computing, which is the AI and the devices. Both those will be very strong. As far as GPU demand goes, all indications are that demand far exceeds NVIDIA's ability to service it, like 10 to 1, 10 to 2 maybe. Within that, Advanced Micro Devices could sell as many GPUs as NVIDIA does and still not meet the demand. Now, that's just the demand for new data centers. We need to also talk about the demand for existing data centers and the refurbishment cycle that's going to start within the next 12 or 18 months. AI GPUs are high power, high performance devices that are being run at full throttle almost 24/7. They are going to wear out 2 or 3 times faster than traditional models, which means they're going to be on an 18-month to 24-month refurbishment cycle, which means that demand is going to be added to organic demand really soon. And that's just going to sustain growth and demand for both these businesses. I think there's room for even a third GPU maker in this market. So it's just a matter of time. I think that will probably happen.
Really great discussion on these first two names. Let's get on to the third name on the list, and we're going to stick in that AI space, right?
All right. So this is Nebius. And Nebius is just the application of all these GPUs. Right now, they kind of have this overhang with debt. But this is a thing where Nebius isn't saying, hey, we want to borrow money and build these things and maybe they'll come to us. They're saying, hey, there is demand for this product now. We have to have this money to build these things to recognize all of this revenue backlog. Right now, the revenue backlog is much bigger than their debt. All they have to do is build these data centers and recognize it. They're building data centers now, and they're expecting to start recognizing some significant revenue acceleration starting in the subsequent fiscal year when they start bringing these next-gen data centers online.
This stock in particular had a huge run up in the last month. Talk about what the catalyst for that was and why you still think it's a buy after that big run up it's had in the last few weeks.
Oh, well, the big run-up was because of the earnings release. The earnings release affirmed the outlook. It affirmed the trajectory. It affirmed the growing backlog, and it also affirmed the giant amount of debt. But that being said, Nebius debt really isn't that big. It's still pretty lightly levered. It's probably going to take on some more debt. But again, the debt is being fueled by the demand. The demand is there. Analysts are lifting targets. We're looking for new highs. So really, it's just a matter of time.
Well, you gave your predictions on where you think the stock could go in the future, but I also want to talk about the other perspective we hear from viewers all the time is why would I buy a stock when it's at its high, especially one that's had some volatility? And so you're predicting a move higher in the future, but do you think that there is enough catalyst with this company to prevent the volatility it's seen in the past? We saw NBIS go very high in the past and then come right back down. This one seems to have more volatility with it than the first two stocks you mentioned on the list too. So what do you say to the naysayers about buying a stock when it's had a run up like NBIS has?
Well, this stock is volatile because it's still establishing itself and growing into its outlook. NVIDIA and AMD both have well-established businesses and much larger institutional holdings, so they're going to be much less volatile. However, with Nebius, the volatility is producing an uptrend. Right now, that uptrend is intact, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. As far as entry points, we're in a range right now. The stock's kind of near the midpoint of that range. It has been pulling back the last couple of days. So you're just going to want to watch those weaknesses, wait for those price pullbacks to happen. And then when we start seeing resistance, or not resistance, but support showing itself in the price action, then it'll be time to start nibbling on the stock and buying some.
All right, another one. And this was the first one that I added to my Burton Spies watch list, and it has done very well so far. This is a stock that has continued to see strong growth, so I'm excited to see how much more it grows. Let's move on to the fourth name on your list, and this is a company you have been bullish on for more than a year now.
Right. That's Amprius Technologies. It's made the buy list this month, because the last earnings release, which was a few weeks ago, affirmed all that we've been talking about for the last year. So ramping production capacity, improving access to government contracts, follow-on orders, affirmation via contracts, and analysts and institutional support are all present. Since that earnings report, is just steady, sustained buying that lifted the stock price to new highs, put it into a whole new ball game compared to where it was, ramping it to an even higher channel than where it was previously. This week, the stock is pulling back a little bit, but it's showing support well above the previous highs.
I know it's pulled back a little bit, but still definitely towards the high end of its range right now. If you are an investor who likes to have stocks that aren't on an uptrend, this last stock will be for you. So bear with us. We have one more coming. That's a different stock story right now. But for AMPX, this really is such a bull case for this company. But again, much like NBIS, we've seen up and downs with AMPX. And I know it's because it's one of those smaller companies out there. Do you think that that support level is going to continue to raise, or is there going to continue to be some volatility with a company like AMPX that's still growing and still in that rapid growth phase?
I think there still will be some volatility because there will be news surprises that shock and invigorate the market. So there will be some influxes of capital. But what I see happening and what's already present in the chart is each pullback will present support at a higher level and keep the uptrend in place. The action over the last few weeks totally is in alignment with that because what I see here is increased volume, likely tied to institutions. They provide a really solid support base. With them driving the price up to where it is and keeping it there, I would say there's a low possibility of a price pullback deeper than where we are right now. Maybe a little bit, but not significantly. And in the event that we do get a slightly deeper pullback, I would also expect to see a pretty strong, robust rebound to follow.
I want to talk about, much like we talked about AMD and NVIDIA and like the future outlook and the demand that we're seeing, I want to talk about the demand case for AMPX. Do we foresee their earnings continuing to grow? And what kind of demand and where is that coming from? Why are we seeing so much confidence from analysts in this company too? What's behind all of that?
That's because the technology works. Right now, their primary sources of revenue are the government. The government's using their batteries because it provides an advantage over adversaries. So in this instance, we can expect the government to rely on this battery company very heavily until there is a better battery. And then when that happens, this battery will go onto the broad market and it'll revolutionize batteries for everybody else. So to me, that's just a very strong and solid near-term outlook with an exit strategy. So right now, it's a defense stock. Soon, it's just going to be a consumer stock. Between then and now, it's going to grow robustly and produce cash flow and return value to shareholders.
Deep conviction for AMPX. I'd love to hear from investors out there if you were early on AMPX because of Thomas. And if you are also bullish on the future of AMPX, it might mean you're interested in more of those robotics and drone stories out there too. This company is very much tied to those names. If you want to look at a list of robotics stocks that didn't quite make Thomas's buy list this year, but are also very interesting growth stories ahead, make sure to check out this article. It's free. There's a list of 5 different robotic stocks that are really changing right now because of some new legislation. You can scan the QR code or click the link in the description to get that free stock list at MarketBeat.com right now. All right, Thomas, on to the one I have been waiting for. I was so shocked to see this make your buy list because in the past, you have not been bullish on this name.
Well, right. There were lots of reasons not to like Big Bear AI, but a lot of those reasons are gone. And now there is potential for this stock to start performing. So over the last year, there were headwinds tied to dilution and to short selling. But in the last release, the company affirmed that they've completed their transition. They've improved their balance sheet. They've made some acquisitions that position them for growth. They've expanded their ability to service and to acquire government contracts. So that just to me points to improving revenue and potential for profits, which are all very bullish. So in this scenario, what we have is a reason for short sellers to start covering and a reason for institutions to start buying. And we're seeing both those things happening in the data. So looking forward, calling this still a very speculative play because they've only just ended that bad period and they've only just begun the good period. Assuming we get some good news in the subsequent reports over the next few weeks, next few months, and few quarters, there is a high probability for a short squeeze to happen, and it could be very vigorous.
Yeah, this is a name that you will see a lot of volatility, a lot of movement on. So if you are wanting to invest in it, be ready for that. And I know the people who were in early on Big Bear have already experienced the ups and downs of this stock. I want to talk about the bull case of why people invested early in this one and why, if you've not invested before, you might be interested now. For those who don't know, Big Bear, kind of a direct competitor to Palantir. Talk about that a little bit more, Thomas.
Yeah, they're less of a direct competitor than kind of like tangential. They provide a lot of services for border control and for customs agents. They're certainly working alongside Palantir, but with their acquisitions over the last quarter, 2 quarters or so, they've been able to expand their ability to service the government, and they've seen some contract wins, and that's really driving a more robust revenue and earnings outlook.
Let's talk about the growth case for Big Bear. What would help increase demand for this product? I know that we've seen some demand pullback, or not demand pullback, I guess interest pullback in Palantir stock. What is going to get Big Bear in front of more contracts and kind of grow their company even more? I just want to see what's the growth story for this name.
Well, the growth story is pretty robust, and it's one that is going to be developing over the next couple of quarters because, as I've been saying, this company is really just exiting this transition period. We're right at the very bottom of a pivot. Right now, the market's kind of in limbo because we're not totally sure these things are going to happen, but the improvement in acquisitions, some client acquisition, some new contract avenues are very promising for the company. It is improving the earnings and the revenue growth outlook. Right now, we're looking at not robust, but still double-digit growth over the next couple of years, and it's possible probable that these targets right now are still too low because the analysts have not been very active with keeping up with this stock. So again, another catalyst is possible here as we see some results coming in and some news developments that analysts start becoming more interested, issuing price target increases, initiating coverage or upgrades.
Yeah, do you think it's still early on Big Bear, especially given all of the global conflicts, the rising geopolitical issues right now? This is a defense company largely. Do you think it's still early for this name?
Oh, it's still very early for this name. I think this has got a multi-year runway for growth. With the AI-enabled services, it's only going to start gaining traction with the government. So we should be seeing that over the next couple of quarters.
All right, Thomas, thank you for this list this month. If you want to follow along with all the stock picks that Thomas recommends each month on our channel, make sure to watch last month's video. It'll take you down the rabbit hole of all of the videos and all of the stocks that Thomas recommends on our channel.